Welcome, everybody, to Relationship Matters livecast. Here we are for another episode. And I'm really excited about today's episode. I have Licky Labji with me, and I'm going to introduce him in a minute. But I just want to remind you what this is all about is how to have healthy relationships at work and at home. And so I explore different subject matters that I wrote in my book called Relationship Matters. And today we're going to talk about authenticity and how blind spots can affect our ability to be authentic with people in relationships. Because when that gets messed up, it makes it very difficult to have a healthy relationship. And so I'm really excited to introduce to you Licky Labji. He's a good friend, and he's becoming a better friend all the time, and he's very generous, and he's helped me out. I would consider him one of my coaches, and I always say the best coaches have coaches. And Licky has really helped me out. So welcome, Licky. He is a sought-after keynote speaker. Licky is passionate about helping people break barriers to unleash their human potential. In fact, his middle name is Hadat, which translates to help. And he channels this into providing value in every relationship he has, personal and professional. I can witness that. He's done that with me. His cheeky titled new book, Death by BS, which is excellent, by the way, has hit Amazon's #1 selling author list. While the title might suggest a mystery thriller, Death by BS is not so much a whodunit as a what has done it. And it is given that only the perpetrators are likely the readers themselves. And so it's a mystery novel that you are the star in, I guess, in a way. And the blind spots are known as our own BS, basically. And this, the things that we all carry around with us that are holding us back. When we're out driving or walking, we're always checking blind spots, but we don't seem to do that in our lives. So with over 25 years as a CEO of a top IT company, Licky's extensive experience in executive leadership has given him a unique perspective that remains uncharted by leaders and organizations in understanding the layers beneath human behavior and how it's impacts growth and productivity of an organization. He has been acknowledged by prominent organizations like TELUS Corp, Lenovo, Royal Bank of Canada for his ability to create mindset shift when it comes to commitment and powerful performance to achieve results. That is a mouthful, Licky, but it is all true. And it's interesting to me because I often call them essential skills now, not, they used to call it soft skills. And a lot of businesses didn't want to invest in soft skills. And yet they really are essential skills if you really truly want a healthy culture in your organization, a productive one, especially now in the COVID era. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in this particular field? And let's jump into our conversation.
Oh, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Thanks for the intro. Nobody's ever read the whole bio ever, so I appreciate you taking the time to read that. It's interesting. I started working on blind spots because I was getting frustrated working with organizations and people about systems and processes. We'd go in there and do consulting around, okay, this is the best strategy to get your business to the next level. I'd be there for a 3-month contract or a 6-month contract. They were all bought into it. I would leave and then I'd follow up 30 days later and nothing is happening. They fall back down to their old habits.
Right.
And it was frustrating. They're paying all this money and investing all this time, but they just weren't taking the steps unless we were there hand-holding them. So what was happening was, what we realized was they didn't really shift the mindset. They just wanted a quick fix. They wanted to come and fix our problems.
Right.
And yeah, we're good at fixing problems, but we don't want those problems to come back after we leave. So I stepped back from that whole scenario of consulting, started looking at what's actually in people's ways. Well, I'm not good enough. I can't be a good enough leader. I can't tell my people what to do. You go tell them, they're going to listen to you. Well, that's not true, because if I'm telling them, you can tell them as well. Right. There's a mindset shift required.
Right.
And that's where I started working on what's actually important, on realizing that people have their own limiting beliefs. They have their own narratives going on, and which are blind spots. They just don't see them.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know in your book, you're just so transparent in the book about your own journey and how how you discovered these things about yourself, that you had blind spots you didn't know were there. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that journey in your own life that
Sure.
helped you kind of become an expert in this. I always say you're not an expert because you have book smarts. We're experts because we've blown it on every area enough that
Exactly.
we've learned how not to do it, right?
We only have 54 minutes left. I've got about 650 million blind spots I can share, so I'm not sure which one you
Yeah.
want to start with, because we all have them. I'm on a search every morning and every day for blind spots. But in my bio, you read something like sought after keynote speaker, and I'm privileged to be able to share my voice to others. But that wasn't the case, Mark. For many years, I had a debilitating stutter,
Right.
and that stutter allowed me, or actually inhibited me from actually speaking out in public. And when I would speak with somebody, it was a stutter. I was nervous. I couldn't get the words across.
Right.
And this all came to me, when I was 10 years old. I came to Canada, and our teacher said to me, just go up and share your immigration process and the story with us. And at 10 years old, you don't care. So I got in front of my class in Ottawa, and then, I started talking, and all of a sudden the kids started laughing. And remember, English wasn't my first language at that point.
Right. Right.
And then one kid yelled, go back to where you came from.
Mm.
And, I was, okay, 10 years old, just, you shrug it off. And second kid yelled, go back to where you came from. Then they all started laughing. So I looked at the teacher, and he kind of just shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know what to do with this.
Right.
So I went back to my chair and started crying. And the life of Licky, not belonging, not good enough, started. And the life of Licky with a stutter began that day.
Oh.
So that was when I was 10. In high school, in grade 8, I got bullied, I got beat up. Went down the wrong path in grade 10. In grade 11, I dropped out of high school. I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
But yet, I dropped out of high school, but I've had 7 successful businesses. But my narrative was, I'm a high school dropout. I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I have a stutter.
Right.
Well, what good am I, right? And, I remember one of my aunts going to me, you'll never amount to anything. And that stuck. That stuck for many years.
Yeah.
Until I sold my IT company. And this was about 6 years ago. I sold the IT company, and I'm sitting, typical, right? You sell your company and you go sit at a beach in Mexico. So I was actually sitting at a beach in Mexico on my favorite hammock. And I realized I was depressed. I had nothing going for me. I wasn't able to talk to anybody. I wasn't helping people. So I called up a good friend of mine and a mentor, Bob Berg, the author of the book called The Go-Givers, and kind of explained this to him. He said, why don't you come become a speaker and a keynote speaker and a coach for us? And I said, well, I can't really speak because of my stutter. He goes, well, you can be a coach for us. So I go down to Orlando for his 3-day session. On the last day, he asks me to stand up. He did this exercise, everybody. I was the second person to do it. And I get up, and he acknowledges me for the person that I am. You're kind, you're gentle, you're warm, you're trusting. I would give business to you in a heartbeat. And then Kathy, his partner, gets up and says, very similar, but yet different. The third person, the fourth person. And I'm in tears now. And this is when I'm 45 years old, right?
Yeah.
And Bob's going, what's going on? I'm going, I've never heard these words before. And he kind of looks at me and goes, I wonder if you've never listened to these words before. I invite you to just listen to the rest of the people and then make a decision.
Right.
So the next 6 people went, and I just felt a sense of relief. Mark, that evening, I took a flight back from Orlando to Dallas. And I'm sitting there next to a passenger, speaking for 2.5 hours without a stutter.
Wow.
Now, that could have been a coincidence. So I actually asked her, I said, I'm going to ask you something silly. Did I have a stutter when I was talking to you? She goes, what do you mean? Like, no, you don't. So then I get to DFW, and I'm talking to strangers trying to figure this out. Then I get home that evening, and I tell my wife this, and she kind of laughed. She goes, great, it took 10 strangers for you to realize what I and your friends have been telling you for many years.
Right.
Mark, the blind spot here is, you'll never amount to anything. You're a high school dropout. Right. You don't belong here. Was so much louder than like, you're actually a good person.
Right.
And I didn't let those words in. And once I did, the limiting beliefs went away, and now I'm a keynote speaker and a coach.
Yeah. See, it's such a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing, Licky. I've heard it before, and it just touches my heart every single time. And I just, this word authenticity. It's a central pillar in my 5 pillars in the book, and I think it's an overused word. I think we've heard a lot about authenticity, but I don't know that people say, well, being authentic is just being yourself. But what if you don't know yourself? What if you have these blind spots and you have these limiting beliefs like you did because of words that were spoken? I know Dr. James Dobson did a study, and he says it takes 7 positive words to negate 1 negative one in a child. And so
Mhm.
you heard those words as a child, it imprinted on you, and it formed what you believed about yourself. And so when we talk about authenticity, either in the workplace or at home, we can't ignore the fact that we have to start by shaping our belief system about ourselves, that we have to
Mhm.
address these blind spots and invite somebody to speak into our life so that they can be exposed.
I totally agree. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is we need to reframe our narrative.
Yeah.
You know, intrinsically and intelligently, I know I'm smart enough. I can read, I can write, I can speak.
Yeah.
But the emotional baggage I was carrying said I'm not smart enough.
Right.
And then people around you are pointing fingers and calling you out and not making you feel that way. But why am I listening to them? They don't mean it, but whatever they said exaggerates because you're already in that spot.
Right.
So
Kind of highlights it, right? And it
it
kind of
does.
confirms in some ways what your your narrative is in your head. So Licky, what are some practical ways? So, like you had that experience with Bob and his crew, and that's amazing. How could somebody that's listening, because I'm thinking from the place of I am part of the Blind Spot Global family, and so I'm part
Mhm.
of a mastermind group every Thursday called Breakthrough Thursdays, and we have some amazing discussions with these business leaders from around the globe. And I often think, like, it's supposed to be a business group, but we always seem to go to these emotional issues, these emotional things. But I think it's important in today's business world to start addressing some of those things. Are you finding that as well in your work with different organizations?
Yeah. You started off by saying these aren't soft skills anymore. These are essential skills.
Right,
Leadership is starting to realize that they've been pushing their people, especially during COVID, to a different level. And they've been empathetic and they've been, leading with heart. They're learning all these things. But what they're really realizing now is that they need to be in front of them authentically and being truly vulnerable and showing up as who they are.
right.
And that's hard. That's hard, Mark. I
Risky.
remember a couple of years ago, I was in New York doing a course, and in my cohort, I asked them, there's 5 of them, and I asked them, I said, how do I show up when I walk into a room? And they kind of chuckle like this. I go, are you sure you want to know? I said, I'm not sure anymore, but yeah, I do want to know.
Yeah,
And they go, well, you show up as a pompous blank. And I'm like, okay. I'm like squirming. What do you mean by
right,
that?
right.
Now I think I'm smiling right now. Am I smiling, Mark?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good.
I think you are.
Usually I don't smile. So when I walk into a room, I'm not smiling because I think I have bad teeth, so I don't smile that much. And I dress up well, and they go, well, when you walk into a room, you look like pompous and you want to own the room. So people don't want to gravitate to you until you speak. And the
Right,
moment you start speaking, then people get warmed up to you and they want to talk to you. So that was just pre-COVID, December before COVID. And I got back, and 2 days later, I went to a networking event, and I walked in with this big smile. And guess what happened? People gravitated and talked to me.
right.
So if you really want to know the easiest way of doing this, ask the people around you, what's the first impression of me? Or what do you feel when I walk into a room about me?
Right.
First of all, will you ask that question? And will you do anything about it? And then the easiest one, which is non-intrusive, is take your blind spot assessment. Mark, maybe we can put that link up a little later.
Yeah, yeah. The blind spot assessment really helps for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Mark. One of the things about the blind spot assessment, I want to talk. We've talked about authenticity, and the other part in relationships, as you know, is trust. One of
Mhm.
the biggest blind spots I had was trust.
Right.
I thought I trusted, but I didn't because I didn't trust myself.
Ah,
And the work that I did around all this, digging deep into my self awareness and emotional intelligence, what I realized was I had to go back in time and realize where the trust issues came from. And it
right.
stemmed from when I was 3 years old. My dad passed away and he was only 34. And 2 years later, the next father figure in my life, which was my grandfather, passed away.
Mm,
Fast forward till I was 17 years old, my best friend driving a car got killed in a car accident. Fast forward 35 years into it, my cousin got killed in a car accident. And my thought process is, boy, no matter who I get close to, I'm not going to be, I can't trust. So
right.
I had a trusting issue with that. But then I turned that around and my daughter, she was 3 years old and we'd gone to Tofino. We stopped off at Port Alberni for a Subway sandwich and we were eating away with some friends. And all of a sudden I see this door open up and my daughter bolts out into the parking lot and all I hear is screech. And a car
Oh,
almost hits her,
so
misses her by an
scary.
inch. And a father never forgets that.
No, nope, you wouldn't.
But, but what I did forget in my life was I picked her up, I held her and said, I'm never letting you go.
Mm,
That I'm never letting you go resulted in being a real close helicopter parent, watching over every move so she doesn't get hurt. But in her mind, my dad doesn't trust me.
right.
Now, I had a trust issue. I gave it to my daughter. So imagine her growing up for 14 years thinking dad doesn't trust me.
Right.
So our relationship was fragile at that point.
Right.
So we all have these blind spots, but
Hmm.
understanding how to get over them, understanding where they stem from and being aware of them, you can let it go now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had a great conversation this morning, Mark, about letting go of guilt,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And I think a lot of times maybe we just don't, most people just don't think what the cause and effect is. We all have cause and effect in our lives. So even somebody we may be working with is acting a certain way or behaving a certain way, and we're like butting heads with them. We don't seem to get along, or we form opinions about them, but we really don't know what has gone on in their life or what's going on behind the scenes. Now, in a work scenario, it can be difficult to bring that up. Is it that's personal? So why are we even talking about that? But I think that the more people can live transparently, the more that they can live authentically, the easier that comes. It doesn't mean that I have to tell them everything that's going on in my life, but it's suffice to be able to say, you know what, I got some struggles on, and we need. I always say we need to separate behavior from personhood. And
mhm.
a lot of times we tend to put a personal label on somebody who is struggling with a behavior issue. And uh, and so I'm wondering, how does a if you're a leader in a company, if you're leading an organization or a team, how would you approach that? How would you bring that kind of authentic um, way of dealing with blind spots in the team to make the team stronger and better?
That's a great question, Mark. And one of the things when we teach, when we work with our leadership teams, we ask them to get vulnerable and raw. I call it be raw and naked. Like
Right.
literally be raw and naked. Imagine you're in this boardroom with nothing on. And the moment you do that, people gravitate to you.
Right.
Now, please take that vision out of your head. I'm talking about being authentic and
Yeah.
vulnerable. Um, if I was if I was a leader right now and had a boardroom with other leaders, the first thing I would tell them is this story about my trust issue,
Right.
because most leaders have a trust issue or it comes across that way and they can't be vulnerable about that. So I would share that story first. And I've done that many times. I've shared my story about stutter many times because I want people to know who I really am and why I am who I am now.
Right.
Now, the people that have known me for many years, you know, have seen the anxious, the anger, the protected, the guarded, the walled person, or they've seen the social media version of Licky. Everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Right? It's all good.
Yeah.
But boy, you know what? No, it hasn't been good. There's been a lot of struggles, depression, anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem saying that right now. Because the more I share, the more people can understand that they may be living the same thing. And it's okay to be vulnerable. So if I'm vulnerable, people around my boardroom might be vulnerable as well.
Right.
So, you know, Mark, as you know, our assessment that we've done and developed is a very instrumental piece when we work with leadership teams.
Mm-hmm.
When that assessment comes out and it says, here's your blind spot, we just ask the leader, read out your potential blind spot. It's a piece of paper telling you don't need to make up anything.
Yeah.
And now they're reading and then they basically ask, hey, is that true? What do you guys think? Is that the way I behave? And great, now you have a conversation back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can read somebody else's blind spot and then they can share. That's a great impetus for a beginning conversation. But as it becomes natural, then people can call out their own BS. And I call it BS for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it really is. It's a story that we create ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And Mark, I want to share a small story with you. I don't think you've heard this one. When I had my IT company, so back in 2010, my wife had cancer. And I used to shave my head off every year for cancer fundraisers. And I'm a motorcycle rider as well. So I would time it. I'd shave my head off around February, March. And then I'd grow my big goatee. And, you know, I'd ride my Harley. And for some reason, May, June, July, August, business sucked. And I thought, okay, well, that's good because now I can just go ride my Harley and have fun. 2 years later, a consultant took me into a client. And we walked in. And he basically hits me on the foot. He goes, let's get out of here. I go, what do you mean? He goes, they've already judged you. You look like a gangster. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
I'm having a hard time imagining that.
Exactly. I'll share a picture of you that. And but I couldn't even fathom that somebody had thought of me as that because that's so far away from who I am.
Yeah.
But it's easy how we judge people, the first impressions.
Right.
Right. And if that consultant didn't point that out to me, I would have kept on going and I would have just assumed it. But there was a blind spot. I was afraid to look in the mirror how I was showing up. I was afraid to look in the mirror why business was slow for those 4 months every year for 3 years in a row.
Right.
But somebody else had to call it out. And I was open to listening to it. That's the other thing. Being open to listening to
be teachable.
What the blind spots are. Yes.
Be teachable. Right. I think that's one of the biggest problems when we have insecurities or, you know, hurts from the past and we have insecurities of these false narratives. What happens is we become insecure, and when we become insecure, we are not teachable. So one of the best ways that you could help yourself, it's a real practical thing you can take away today, is that the one thing you can do is actually just humble yourself. Be teachable. Realize that we don't know everything. We don't know what we don't know. And I'm always wanting to learn from others and learn from others' experiences. And you know, I've often even said kids are great teachers. We can learn from children, their childlike faith and their you know, their adventurism and stuff like that they're adventurous. And so I think that's number one thing, right? Is if we can become teachable, no matter what our role is.
Well, teachable is really key. But Mark, I want to add something on there as well. Being able to receive the words that are coming. I know teachable is very similar.
Yeah.
But sometimes we can be taught, but if we don't receive the words as they're landed, and right. I think these are your words, if I'm not mistaken. Listen with your heart, not with your pain.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's in the book.
And I love that because, you know, ever since I read that, Mark, it's resonated to me because as I speak from my heart. As I listen, I try and listen from heart and not from their pain. It's hard. It's hard because there's a lot of pain sometimes that comes across your way.
Yeah.
But just understanding that and being able to receive that, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So give us a practical thought here, maybe Licky, about like, how do you know what to reject and what to receive? Because sometimes somebody those kids with laughing at you, how do you got to learn how to reject that, not receive it. But then when somebody compliments you, you need to learn how to receive it graciously. And how do you tell the difference if if they come with a constructive criticism versus just criticism?
Well, at 10 years old, it's going to be very hard to differentiate those
don't worry
things.
about
Okay.
But
Today,
yeah,
as we say that we're becoming a lot more self-aware.
right,
Unfortunately, we all think we're self-aware, but we're not. There's a big step on that. But imagine we are. How it lands to you, you've got to judge it. So
right,
if you say something to me and I feel a gut instinct or something is going wrong, I have to make that decision right off the bat for
right,
myself, not for you. You could say whatever you want to say, but how it lands to me, I need to make that decision. Now,
right.
if you say something to me and I question it or it actually hurts, it's up to me to come and ask you a clarifying question.
Right.
Now, if I sit with it and I live with it, that's on me as well.
Exactly.
Everything is on yourselves, nobody else.
Yeah, so good. We have to take responsibility.
We have to take responsibility the way we speak and the way we hear.
Right.
If we don't like the way we hear it, we can question it. We can ask clarifying questions. If it's still not the way we like to hear it, you've got a couple of choices. Tune it off or receive it the way it's said.
Yeah.
That's on you.
Sometimes people ask me the difference between judgment and discernment. And I often say that discernment has the other person's best interest in mind. Judgment usually has your own interest in mind. In other words, that person has embarrassed you, or they've made you feel awkward, or they've made you feel something. That's when we judge. But when it's discernment, it's like, I care about you, Licky, and so I want to bring up a difficult subject because I want the best for you. That makes it much more easier. I always say, if you're going to have a good meal, you need to set the table first. And so if you're going to have a good conversation, you got to set the table. I might need to say, hey, Licky, I've got something tough to talk to you about. I know when you and I first started engaging, you challenged me on my limiting beliefs about myself. And you would ask me very direct, probing questions that could make a guy feel very uncomfortable. But I knew you had my best interest in heart. And so I could receive what you were saying, and I could receive the challenge of it because I knew that the intent was right. So that's one way. If somebody's earned the right to speak into your life, then it might be good to listen.
I love what you just said. Set the table in the conversation, right? And if somebody just says, I'm coming in with a heavy conversation, I love you, I care for you, let's talk about this, but let me just explain what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That opens up, the guards go off right away.
Right.
The moment we start blaming or talking without setting the table, the guard's up so high, no matter what you say, isn't going to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a blind spot as well, right? It's a blind spot on the other person as well as on you. You've got to have that empathy tuned in so much that you can actually present yourself the way it's needed to be presented.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had a client yesterday say to me that they're just not empathetic. And I said, no, that's a choice. And, you're not everybody's born with empathy, but everyone can develop it. So I challenged him a little bit on how to practice empathy and how to, in that situation. And, but I think a lot of people have a predisposition of what they think they're like and what they think others are like. And I often say, if you don't see yourself in the right light, it's almost impossible to see others in the right light. And so how do we break through this, Licky? How are you seeing it break through in people's lives in real situations right now? What are some practical takeaways on this journey to authenticity that you could share?
It's pretty simple. All of your clients listening right now should be hiring you and I as a coach.
There you go.
Actually, all joking aside,
yeah,
I've had a coach for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
And that has been my impetus of shift.
Yeah.
Because even though I'm looking for my own blind spots, my coach highlights them with me all the time. And I'm open to that. It is key that you've got to have somebody trusted with you to start looking for them with you. There's a lot of different ways to do it yourself. but I do recommend working with somebody to really highlight that. It doesn't have to be a coach per se. It can be somebody you love, somebody who cares for you, but having a dialogue back and forth, but being
Yeah.
open to that. But Mark, if we start thinking about what's important in our lives, we're all into serving, we're all into giving to others. When do we become first?
Ah.
If we're giving to everybody else and going out and talking to people all day, helping them, when does our glass get full?
Right.
If you're not authentic to yourself, you're not true to yourself, you can't be yourself to others.
Yeah.
So we're all good people. We talked about that this morning, Mark. We're all good people. You may have taken an action that was wrong or bad. Forgive yourself for that and move on.
Yeah.
But we have this barrier and guard that we don't allow ourselves to penetrate through that when we do something wrong or when we find this blind spot. We're afraid of the ego being hurt. Ego is one of the biggest blind spots that we all have.
Yeah.
Letting go of that is key as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so important to our emotional well-being and our family's well-being and our work family's well-being to look at these tough subjects, and dig down deep into our own hearts. I mean, there's various reasons why people would avoid it, but I think that I think today more than ever, maybe because of the COVID, I think the COVID is, as much as it's caused things, I think it's actually revealed things. I think that COVID, the shutdowns and the going to online with teams and whatnot, has not necessarily caused trouble for the teams. It's actually exposed the trouble that was already there that you could hide. and I wonder if we could speak to that for a few minutes, Licky, on the new world order here, on how we've navigate in this kind of new way of doing things, because it seems like it's much harder to hide things, and yet there's more hiding being going on than ever, like with social media and whatnot. We can hide behind facades, and yet it seems like, if maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like it's so difficult not to be transparent now. Like, are you finding that as well, or is that?
I am, and Mark, it's interesting. These problems were there before, but when you had that physical interaction, you could read body language. You could either ignore it, you can see what's going on. But right now, even over Zoom, you're not really seeing emotions.
Right.
So to really communicate, you've got to be true. You got to be raw. You got to be authentic and ask. When you're walking around, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And you walk away. Well, when you get on Zoom, hey, Mark, what's going on? And looking
Right.
in the eyes and actually being present and really listening. Leaders are learning that. They've realized that this is the key. People are missing out on that physical interaction right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of emotions, a lot of loneliness happening right now. There's a lot of trauma, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression around this. And if we're not present as leaders, if we're not present as teammates and picking up those cues of what's going on, we're doing a disservice to the people that we're talking to.
Right.
Because not everybody's listening to this call right now and saying, okay, boys and girls, be vulnerable.
Right.
They're not listening to that, right?
Right.
And they don't know how to do that. So whoever is here listening to this, going through this, reach out and touch and just be authentically available to them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And it's so practical, Licky. I just love that. It's like, pick up the phone. These odd, funny things that we have here actually have phones in them.
I know.
It's not just a text. You can't communicate through a text or an email or and Zoom you can, because you can still get facial expression and indentation, but make the call, set up the FaceTime, reach out to somebody on your team rather than seeing maybe their behavior, maybe how they're acting is because they are struggling with depression, because they're struggling with aloneness, and their reaction is simply a cause and effect of that. What would happen if you were the person that made that call and reached out to that individual and said, you know what, I care about you. I can see you're struggling. Is there anything I can do to serve you? I think that could change the world.
Yeah.
Am I being too plateauish or?
No, Mark, it's interesting. When we start living our lives that way,
Yeah.
that energy, and I know you're an energy believer, I'm a big energy believer. Once we live that, it's our energy that provides that guidance to others, right?
Yes.
And I got to share a small story with you.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the big snowfalls we were having around Christmas time?
Mm-hmm.
I was driving home late that night on Highway 99, and there was a car next to me just whizzed by. And then about half a mile, I see him wearing into the grass, into the farm field, and
Wow.
goes in there. And 5, 6 cars went right by him. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stop and see what's going on. And as soon as I stopped, I run out to his car. He's actually probably 70, 80 yards into this mush area, into a ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, he came out of his car. I go, are you okay? And he was a 19-year-old boy.
Wow.
And he just looked so dazed. I go, are you okay? And he just said, he says, you're part of my story today.
Wow.
And I knew exactly what he was trying to do. That wasn't an accident. He was trying to do that on purpose.
Wow.
And that just broke my heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nothing I could do except sit there and just talk to him.
Right. Just be present.
Just be present, be there for him. And I'm just hoping, and I know we had about 10 minutes before the police got there. I'm hoping those 10 minutes, he found some hope in life.
Yeah.
Because he had given up hope. There's nobody else there for him.
Right.
And I could have looked at it as, boy, he could have hit me and killed me. But I turned around and said, I was supposed to be there at that time to talk to him.
Yeah.
So it's that energy that we're providing and being people, who we are as people.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so practical. So to live authentically and to is, there's a few nuggets in your story. First and foremost, take notice.
Yeah.
Notice the people around you. Notice the team members around you. Secondly, be present. Be present. Make that call. Reach out to them and just be there. Often I have people tell me, like, we just didn't know what to say, so we didn't do anything. And it's like, you don't have to say anything when somebody's grieving or somebody's struggling. You just your presence makes a difference. You don't have to have the right words. You just got to be present, right? So take notice, be present, and make that step. Take the step of reaching out and doing it. I think if that, there's three very practical ways. And when that you do that, what happens is a return on that investment comes back to you. And I think that one of the returns on that investment is you feel good about yourself, and it starts to collapse that negative narrative in your head. When you actually help someone else, when you actually reach out of your own comfort zone and do this for someone else, it makes sense, doesn't it? That now all of a sudden I start feeling good or better about myself. And it actually kind of opposes those false narratives or those limiting beliefs, because we actually did something. We can sit around and think about doing something forever and it's not going to change anything. But if we could actually just step into it, and I love your story because it's just such a graphic illustration. On a cold, windy night, it would have been easily just to keep driving like the other drivers did.
Yeah.
But you took notice that there was a crisis, and then you stayed and you were present and you offered hope. There's 3 steps that you can do. Anybody can do that. Doesn't matter your position in life. It doesn't matter your position in the company. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the child in the family or you're the adult in the family. It doesn't matter who you are. You could do those three things and you could make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. Mark, thanks. And I want to just, I want to add to that a little bit.
Yeah, please.
That would have been my behavior my entire life. I would have done
Yes.
that at any time, not
Yeah.
just because I've done the blind spots, but the
Yes.
difference is 10 years ago, if you asked my close friends what they thought of me, would be different than what they think of me today. And those close friends probably aren't the same friends I have today.
Mm.
Because there was this guard, ego, guard, protecting, anger,
Pride.
anxiety, pride, never vulnerable.
Right.
But intrinsically, I was always that person. But
Yes.
it was such a facade that I was building
Right.
that people were afraid to come to me because I was just pushing them away.
Right.
Right. The moment you become authentic to yourself and know who you are, the right people in your life will stay.
Yeah.
And the other ones, you'll either leave them or move away from them.
Wow.
And that's hard. It's really hard, but it does happen.
Yeah. Simple, not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so true, Licky. And it's interesting how we unknowingly help shape people's opinion of us. You know, I remember one time somebody said, "Mark, can I talk to you?" And it was, you know, they were concerned for me for a reason. And they said, "We hear people compliment you, and you always have a justification for their compliment or a deflection." And they said, "Can I speak to that?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." You know, and they said, "It's a form of pride, actually, because if you're truly humble, you just say thank you. You don't need to justify and you don't need to deflect. You just say thank you." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was just like, whoa, right in the heart. It's like, yeah, the reason I had to justify or deflect was because I didn't believe what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
In some way, I thought it was the imposter syndrome, you know, coming up or whatever. And when I stopped doing that and I just thanked them and I had gratitude that I was able to speak life to them or to encourage them or bring hope to them because of maybe I was speaking somewhere or I was encouraging, I realized that that's who I am. I'm an encourager. And so they were thanking me for being an encourager. They weren't thanking me because I was all that in a bag of Doritos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's because I had touched their life in some way. So, yeah, that's, you know, it's just so important for us to just say thank you and accept those compliments from people. But it's interesting because I wouldn't do that. It almost undermined what I was trying to accomplish in their lives because I would deflect or speak poorly of myself.
For sure. And Mark, that's no different than, you know, we all go out for dinner and then there's four of us and one person really wants to pay the bill. And so do the other three. That means one person's fighting for the bill and the other the other three people are actually hurt because they can't provide the bill as well. So there's got to be this learning to receive and give at the same time.
Yes. In fact, I
And
tell people I didn't learn how to be a good giver until I was actually a good receiver.
yeah.
It was my generosity went up significantly once I learned how to receive when I was in need. Because I realized I was robbing people of their blessing if
Mm-hmm.
by saying no, I'm rejecting them, not just their gift, right? And so I started to learn how to receive in a better way. Bill Holden, a friend of mine who's been watching here, said he just made a comment here. This has been such an interesting discussion. We really do need to clarify communication before we judge it. I need to make sure I receive a comment the way it was intended and not read into it, read the worst into it. Isn't that true? We tend to do that, right? That's a great
For
comment,
sure.
Bill. Thank you.
For sure. Yeah, Bill, thanks. And, you know, that's exactly it, Mark. We put so much meaning behind a conversation because it's our own limiting beliefs that are in the way, our own narrative that's stopping us.
Yeah.
Right. So Listen, Mark, I keep on quoting you every day. Listen with your heart, not with your pain.
Yeah.
And it's
Listen to
so important.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah, listen to understand.
absolutely. So
And speak
important.
that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So Licky, anything else on your heart you want to share about this, about anything else left in your heart that you really want to share with the audience? And if anybody has a question, it's about quarter two. So if you had a question, by all means, comment. It comes up in our studio here, and so we'll make sure we read your question and answer it if you have one. But I want to give you opportunity, Licky, to share what you feel needs to be shared with the audience to help them remove the barriers in their life, because that's what you're passionate about.
Yeah. Mark, you're part of our global network with the Blind Spot coaches, and we're trying to create a community of leaders and our trainers like myself and Kevin. We're out there to transform the way leadership is done.
Yeah.
We're helping leaders understand and lead truly with their heart, be empathetic, and truly stick with that. And it just filters down to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
People complain about, my team isn't engaged, they're not getting the job done. How do I attract the right people? These systems aren't getting done properly, these processes aren't being done, we're losing money. Well, all of that is the reason all that happens is we're not here. We're not leading with who we are. And the moment we can connect with somebody, Mark, I know for a fact, hands down, you and I have a great relationship. No matter what situation I'm in, no matter where I am, no matter how bad of a situation I'm in, I know I can pick up a phone and call you.
Absolutely.
And that's because we built a relationship and we've been authentic with each other. We know our darkest secrets, where we're at.
Yeah.
The teams need to be able to do that as well. That's when that teamwork cohesiveness comes in. I will bend over backwards to do the work for you. Just be honest and show up as who you are. And that's hard. But as soon as we start doing that, those teams, like the teams that we're working with, and it's not even months, it's like weeks of transformation that happens.
Yeah. It's amazing how fast it can happen if everybody on the team's open and they're willing to go there. And what's interesting is you may not talk about any of their productivity problems. You're just dealing with their hearts. And all of a sudden the productivity goes up after you've been there. It's like, right?
That's exactly it.
It's so worth the investment. I always tell people, you will not make a better investment in your life than into relationships. You just won't make a better investment. The return on that investment will be thousandfold in all different areas of your life. It's not just a return on investment financially, although that happens as well. It's just the return on investment when you invest in relationships and you get a return on that investment. There's nothing better in life. That's what brings everything flows out of relationship through life.
Mark, I want to say yes and on that one.
Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree with that. But the relationship with yourself first, then the relationship with others.
Yeah. I often talk about that, Licky, just relationship with the Creator, God, and relationship with yourself and relationship with others. Those are the three areas of relationship that we need to have healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the big difference, because we always expect others, you and somebody else, to have a great relationship so we can get stuff done. But if you're not aligned with yourself, you can't communicate and show up authentically.
Yeah, that's so good. So good.
Unfortunately, sometimes that other person, the partner, you may not be aligned, and that's okay too. So that's the big deal there. So once you show up authentically, others around you will as well, and then it'll work or it won't work. But at least it won't be a battle. You'll know,
and at least you'll know.
Yeah.
A lot of times it stays hidden. The tension stays hidden, or the reasons for the tension stay hidden for years, and the team never really comes together. Whereas if everybody was just honest and transparent and authentic, we might have found out, hey, we're not a good match. We're not a good, like, I need to go somewhere else, or they need to go, whatever. Like, yeah, I think sometimes we don't want to, we have a wrong view of conflict. And so we avoid it like crazy. But actually conflict's an invitation to deeper relationship.
Yeah. Mark, you say that. I know we've got not much time here, but I want to just wrap up by saying one more thing.
Yeah.
As you become more vulnerable and open, and in every organization, in every relationship, there is conflict. There
Yes.
is that what do you call it? Friction.
Yeah.
The moment you start becoming vulnerable and just showing up and talking, 9 times out of 10, that conflict goes away because you're actually talking with your feelings and your heart as opposed to blaming. And then that
Right.
blame stops. The moment the guards go away and you can be real, they're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's not what I meant. Oh, that's not what I meant. Oh, well, there you go. Now you're actually talking.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't that
And
true?
so yeah, it's so true. And when we go into organizations and literally in our first meeting that we have with people, we do that. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that person was like that. I didn't know that person was like that.
Yeah. Max Lucado says conflict is inevitable, combat is optional.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mark, in our blind spot assessment, you've got the connector, which is myself, and you've got the analyzer, right?
Right.
Imagine I'm the storyteller and the analyzer wants a lot of detail, and I'm just storytelling and the analyzer wants detail. You're two different people. You're not going to connect. But as soon as you realize that this is what I do, this is what they do, you meet in between, all of a sudden the conflict goes away.
Right. Right. So we want to just highlight again, I'll put it up on the screen here, but you can go to my website, markgordon.ca, and you'll look at what I offer. You'll see the blind spot assessment, and you can take that assessment. It's 3 minutes, and it's great for whole teams to do. And you'll learn about each other. You'll find out why that person acts the way they respond, the way their personality style is, and what potential blind spots come from that. I've taken many teams through this process, and it's just so powerful every time, because now if you have understanding, a lot of times you have more grace and space for other people. If you don't know why they do what they do, then how are you supposed to trust that or believe it? So yeah, so I just want to encourage you, if you're watching and you have a team, by all means, or just even an individual, you can go and couples. I get couples to do this. All my clients do the blind spot assessment as well, because it can help them with communication as well.
I love it. I love it.
It works
And
really well.
Mark, lastly, I will say that, we have a choice to choose ourselves or not choose ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. If you choose not to do anything, it's your choice to choose not to do anything.
Yeah.
Be okay with it, or choose to do something for yourself and look in the mirror and really see who you are.
Yeah. And the bottom line is, it's only you that can make the changes. You're the only one that can take the walls down. Other people can't do it for you. I can't do it for you. You got to make that decision to make the change. And if you don't, then you'll continue to blame others and deflect and keep struggling. But
in the last, what I will say is that as you choose yourself, don't let others make you wrong for choosing that.
Yes.
That's big as well.
I agree. It's not selfish to care for yourself. It's actually a gift to those around you. If I don't take care of myself, I'm not as good a husband. I'm not as good a dad. I'm not as good a leader. So I'm not talking about that everything's like the different. It's some people think it's selfishness or it's self-centeredness to take care of yourself. No, that's different. Being self-centered and being self-focused is the different thing than being self-caring and learning and growing and expanding your ability emotionally. I think that's different. And so it's good to distinguish the two, because some people say to me, when I say we got to take care of ourselves, they say, well, that just makes you selfish. No, actually, when you truly take care of yourself and you truly discover your value, it actually humbles you. It doesn't make you proud. It makes you humble and grateful. That's what I've found anyway.
Yeah. Well, leaders, get out there and ask people around you, how do I show up? That's huge.
Yeah. So leaders and people, if you want to find Licky, you can find he's a coach, he's a speaker, he is a facilitator, he's an expert in in this. And so you can go to his website. You can you'll find links to buy his book. You'll find all that. It's an excellent read. I highly recommend it. If you haven't gotten a copy of it yet, go ahead and order that. And I would engage Licky on any given day. He's got some good things coming up. So watch his website. They've got all kinds of programs going. What, maybe mention a couple, Licky?
Yeah, we have an event on February the 25th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and it's for leaders only, where we're going to be getting together with like-minded leaders, talking about the current situation that they're in and sharing what's working for them and what's not working for them. And it's a group of 12 people only, so the first 12 get a chance to be part of this.
Awesome.
And it's a way for us to learn from other leaders and also share what we've been learning from the other organizations we've been working with across North America.
Awesome. That sounds excellent. So if you're interested in that, make sure you go ahead and do that.
Yeah, send me an email. Go to lickylavji.com, send me an email, and we'll get you on the list.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much. And I'm just going to put there we go. I'll just leave it up on the banner there while we wrap up. Well, thanks for joining us today. We're at the top of the hour, and thank you, Licky. I really appreciate your input today. There was some real practical nuggets in there, but also some inspiration and some hope, and so and some challenge. I think that the challenge today was really good. That people it's time to step up, take notice, be present, and provide hope. There's your 3 steps for success today. And thanks so much for joining us. We will talk to you next week. And I'm looking forward to my guest next week. I have a fella whose name is Mark as well, and from the States. And he went through incredible trauma as a child and came out the other end and wrote a book about forgiveness. And it's going to be a powerful conversation. So I invite you to join us next week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.